Any thoughts on fading the Chants? A team that's really earned their way into the hearts of gamblers over the past 2 seasons.
Well, Mike, we might as well jump into the G5 high five right here, shall we?
Let's do it.
I'm taking over 56.5 in that game. For kind of a lot of the things you talked about. You talked about the explosiveness that Old Dominion's offense have. They're 18th in the country in passing explosiveness. And yeah, this coastal defense has really taken a step back in defending explosiveness, especially the pass. Ollie Jennings is a star, 137 yards per game. That leads the entire country. Hayden Wolf, 9 touchdowns, just 1 interception. So I do like what Old Dominion's gonna be able to do on offense, and I agree this is a big mismatch about what Coastal does, giving up explosive plays, and Old Dominion is a very explosive offense. But on the flip side, we thought Grayson McCall would take a step back after losing all of his weapons, Javion Hiley, Isaiah Likely. He's still completing 70% of his passes. He has 15 touchdowns, just 1 interception. He is so damn good. I mean, he is just so good. And then you mentioned it in the backfield, they lost Shamari Jones to the NFL. Reese White and Braden Bennett were expected to be their top 2 backs. Well, Bennett hasn't even played yet. White's missed the last 3 games. And in comes, CJ Beasley, averaging 87 yards per game. He's gone over 100 yards in 2 of the last 3 games. I believe it was your G5 Hero of the Week last week. This Jamie Chadwell offense is just such a well-oiled machine. It's about as good of an offense you'll see in the G5. I don't know how Chadwell doesn't end up in the Power 5 next year. They're 9th in the country in success rate, 4th in passing success, 24th in rushing success. They just do everything well. And this Old Dominion team has very much struggled against the run. So I think Coastal is going to be able to just do what they do, run their offense, and move the ball, consistently on this Old Dominion defense. And then when Old Dominion has the ball, it's going to be the big play. They're going to score quickly. So I kind of like what you said about Old Dominion. I do agree with you. If I was going to take a side, I would play, obviously, we're riding with the Wolfpack. But I also like the over here because I think Coastal is going to be able to move the ball in this defense. And I like the explosive factor of the Old Dominion offense. So we're going to give you a little 2-for-1 special here.
Nice little bonus for ODU that they got Blake Watson back last week.
Yeah.
This is, statistically one of the worst rushing teams in the country, but for most of that time, he was banged up. He was off the field, comes back. I think he had 80 rushing yards last year. Gives him just a little bit of balance, just enough to keep the defenders in the box interested for Coastal. All right, for my addition to the G5 High Five, I'm going to go with another Sun Belt play here. I was kind of surprised to see Louisiana Monroe catching 17 at South Alabama. It's been a long time since the Warhawks have been feisty, but I think that's exactly what they are right now. An outright win against Louisiana, who had been the gold standard in the Sun Belt West for years, and a 7-point loss last week to Coastal Carolina. They cover that number of 12.5. And honestly, it just comes down to, am I getting a lot of points, and do I trust the quarterback? I do trust the quarterback. Chandler Rogers and Sun Belt play 6 total touchdowns against just 1 interception, 70% completions, and 36 yards per game on the ground as a dual threat. Last year, they were a 2-touchdown underdog to South Alabama at home, which was the largest against an FBS opponent in terms of points being laid by the Jaguars in over 3 years. They go out and win that game outright. Rogers was dynamic, 369 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. So I've already seen it on film. I've already seen what they can do this year in terms of covering numbers. I think this line's inflated by about 3.5 points, crosses over that key number of 14 and up to 17. I really like the Warhawks here. I know South Alabama has been impressive. They almost had an outright win in Pasadena against UCLA. This is not to say that their offense hasn't taken a major step forward this season, but 17 just seems a little rich for my blood. So I'm going to go with the Warhawks in what is becoming kind of an interesting up for grabs Sun Belt West race. What are your thoughts on Chandler Rogers and kind of going the bottom of the barrel, absolute bottom of the board here with a team that's actually pretty competitive?
Yeah, this is a weird game where, I don't totally love it and I probably won't, but I don't hate it either. I definitely like getting above 17. I wouldn't play it if it got under 17. Um, I do like ULM. I think they're better than people think, but I also think South Alabama's just like sneaky very good. I feel like they're a team we haven't talked about. No one's talking about them, but like I think they're pretty good. So that would make me nervous. But I think getting the key number of 17 is big here.
I do think there's a bit of a difference between being very good, which they are. I mean, this is a bowl team in South Alabama, being very good and also being in a position where you regularly run away from teams. That's not been a spot they've been in for really the last 5 years. So it's kind of a different level of expectation. How long do they play their starters? Do they look ahead? I believe they have Troy the following week, which is a critical game in the Sun Belt. So How much of that is look ahead factor? How much do they really keep the foot on the accelerator? I think we're going to learn a lot about South Alabama playing that, hunted role as opposed to the hunter. All right, what's your next one here for the G5 high five?
I'm going to go back to the well, fading Louisiana Tech, and I'm going to take North Texas -6.5. Obviously, the Louisiana Tech fade did not work last week as they did get the win over UTEP, but UTEP was our underdog money line, so we knew that was cursed as soon as I gave it out. But UTEP outgained them 501 to 380. They just had, it was the Gavin Hardison 3 interceptions and a fumble. He's had that kind of bugaboo throughout most of this season. One of the interceptions was a pick six. One of them set up a 4-play, 47-yard touchdown drive. And the other one was so far in UTEP's own zone that it set up a field goal despite a negative 6-yard drive. So, it was kind of a fluky win. La Tech, I still don't think is very good. They're outside of the top 100 in success rate on offense and defense, outside of the top 100 in havoc on offense and D. They're 98th in rushing, 97th in passing. They don't do anything well. And we know North Texas wants to run the ball. Ayoade, Oscar Attaway are both they're so good. Adai is averaging 7 yards per carry. Attaway leads the conference in 29 missed tackles forced. Him and Adai are third and fourth in this conference in yards after contact. Well, Louisiana Tech is 97th in defending rushing success, and they rank 130th in tackling. Now, this team can't tackle anything. Adai and Attaway are going to run through them like a wet paper bag. And I just think the Mean Green are going to run the ball all day here, and they're going to win by a touchdown. So give me North Texas laying 6.5 against La Tech.
An advanced analytics alert here. I believe you're 2 North Texas plays away from setting the podcast record for games involving one team from G5 land. So I appreciate that you continue to go back to the well. And
I didn't even mention Austin Aune and his 29-year-old ass.
There we go. I believe Major League Baseball, was he in the Yankee system? Is that right?
It was. Go Yanks.
There we go. Go Yanks. All right. I'm going to go with 2 more plays here. And if you're going to pay close attention to my plays here in week 7, you're going to notice I'm all underdogs. Going back to the Sun Belt, Georgia Southern plus 11.5. And let me start it by saying this. James Madison's one of the best stories going in college football. They're undefeated. They're ranked in the top 25 in their transition year. Unbelievable. But do we know for sure that James Madison is that good? Because they've played 4 teams that absolutely stink. Middle Tennessee, 115th in Sagarin. Norfolk State, 246th. Texas State, 140th. And Arkansas State, 114th. They did play against Appalachian State, and they played a tremendous second half. So for the whole season, against a quality opponent, I've seen them play one really good half of football. So I'm going to take Georgia Southern plus 11.5. This is a Georgia Southern Eagle offense that is 28th in success rate, 9th in rushing explosiveness, 21st in passing success rate. And last week, they just got snake bit with all the interceptions, 4 INTs. They lose the turnover battle 5-2 to Georgia State. I don't know if that's something that James Madison can count on to be able to cover. Essentially, you're saying they're going to win by 2 touchdowns or better to feel comfortable about covering this number. I'm just going to go with the offense that I think has done a masterful job in year 1 under Clay Helton, remaking themselves, going from a pseudo triple option tenants to this up tempo, one of the fastest teams in plays per second in the entire country. Kyle Van Treese has talked about reclamation projects. He's someone who's turned it around from his days in the MAC. So I like the Eagles here catching points at home. And I think James Madison is going to start to feel a little bit of the weight of those expectations now shifting to them with that, number next to their name on the chyron at the bottom of the screen. What are your thoughts on fading the Dukes here in the Sun Belt matchup?
Yeah, I honestly considered this one. I think the only reason I didn't, because I feel like I don't have a grasp on what James Madison is fully. Clearly, most people don't. But I agree with you. I loved Georgia Southern last week. I hyped them up. We took them against Georgia State. Obviously, they didn't cash, but I'm not going to overreact too much. I still think they're just as good as I did last week. And this Georgia State team that we were high on at the beginning of the year just kind of finally showed up. And like you mentioned, it was 4 interceptions by Van Treese that kind of made a difference. He still threw for over 350 yards. So I haven't really changed my opinion on Georgia Southern. I still think their offense is sick. And while I didn't play it because I don't feel like I have a grasp on James Madison, I definitely like the side. I thought about it, and I would play Georgia Southern if I had to.
What's interesting to me, the game within the game for James Madison and Georgia Southern is James Madison, at least on paper, their run defense has been tremendous this year. So does the tempo that Georgia Southern implements, does that throw them off in terms of personnel groupings and they're able to get some favorable looks in the box for Jalen White to get some rushing yards? If they do, then I think they really have a chance to be balanced offensively. If it becomes a situation where they're constantly throwing 50 attempts in this game, it could be, putting the ball in harm's way and have more interceptions, kind of a repeat performance from week 6. All right, I'm going to turn to my last play, another underdog. And in times of stress and chaos, you need to go with the tried and true players of the G5. I'm going to go with Chris Reynolds and the Charlotte 49ers catching 23.5 at UAB. Chris Reynolds is humming again. Last 3 games, 11 touchdowns, 297 yards per game. And on the other side of the thing, Charlotte's defense is so bad at stopping the run that opposing offensive coordinators have just said, why even throw the ball at all? In terms of teams in the country, they're facing the 128th worst run defense. That's Charlotte. And then top 5 usage by their opponents. So they just turn around, hand the ball to their running back, and just collect their touchdowns. What I think that's going to mean in this game is not as many chunk plays for UAB. I think they're going to score 30, 40 points, certainly into the 40s in this game. But Charlotte catching 23.5, I know that I would say a top 20 G5 passing attack, maybe top 10 with Chris Reynolds. Garbage time. I'm just seeing this backdoor being left open for the 49ers. I'm going to go with a big total for a team that likes to win with defense and running the ball. North of 3 touchdowns seems generous to me, so I'm going to go there. I know we nailed UAB last week, and they absolutely drilled Middle Tennessee, but that was a team that did not have the same quarterback play. So what are your thoughts on the Blazers potentially taking the foot off the accelerator in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, if there's ever a team that will leave the back door open and can run through it at the blink of an eye, it's Charlotte. And this is one of those games where I think the back door will be open all game. And I think it'll be scary because UAB will probably be up like 21-3 at the end of the first quarter, and then you're sweating. But Charlotte's just going to keep chugging along. The only thing that would make me nervous about this play is as we've seen, real possibility that Chris Reynolds gets hurt in the first half, and then the door is slammed shut. But as long as Reynolds stays healthy, we've seen it. I agree, the door will be open the whole game. As far as that offense goes, you're never going to have to worry about them not being able to kind of claw their way back into a game.
Starting quarterback's getting hurt. Going to knock on wood on that one after losing Doug Brumfield last week for UNLV. That was tragic. I think they're going to be in trouble against Air Force. It looks like it's going to be Cameron Friel again. Guy takes too many sacks. I think UNLV's dream season.
Why is it not Harrison Bailey? I don't understand why they're not playing Harrison Bailey.
At this point, it is a mystery. Maybe he's got some injury, maybe some eligibility issues, but you would think just from a pure athleticism standpoint that they'd roll the dice with him because offensively, they look totally lost without Brumfield last week against San Jose State.